stay with that. We unpack the tourism sector recovery plan. I'm joined now by the CEO of the Tourism Business Council, Chifiwa Chivengwa. Chifiwa, thank you very much for your time. The context is that food and beverage was hit during the time of the pandemic in 2020, down 42%, accommodation down 72%, the MICE sector completely obliterated. It's a serious crisis. I mean, if you really look at what's happening in the tourism sector, does this plan have clear, defined, tangible actions in specific areas that will lead to recovery?
No, thank you for having me. The plan that was released today really defines what we need to do in order for the sector to recover. So, as I emphasize, is the what. What needs to happen, what are the enablers, what are the things that needs to be fixed. And, it has points whereby it will say, we need to protect the supply side, we need to eliminate, the demand, we need to make sure that the policy, the framework is conducive enough for sector to recover. So it gives the what. What we have to do now as executives and as people that are within the sector is to define the how. How are we going to achieve the things that we said we need to achieve? And this means that, we now have to say, how do we protect the supply side? How do we, stimulate demand? How do we sort out the legacy issues that have been there, in the past? And that is done, on the DG level, the CEO of SAT, including ourselves, as a private sector, we need to define how we're going to do this and how we're going to measure it so that it's more tangible, it's nimble, and we're able to do what we need to do on the ground.
Right. Your expectation is for government to provide certainty, for example, on the norms and standards on biosecurity, the COVID-19 protocols. How soon do you expect that certainty to be given to you? But also stimulate demand. That's a role also you're expecting government to certainly play as far as upping the image of South Africa. I'm sure you are concerned by the travel advisory that was issued by the U.S. putting us on the red zone because of the so-called variant that was first discovered here. It's not a South African variant. It's a variant that was first discovered here. It's everywhere else in the world. However, that's part of the reasons why we are put on that red zone. What are your expectations in terms of those clear actions that government need to take, and how soon you want to see those?
Well, from the communication point of view and the protection of the brand so that we can stimulate demand, there has to be a robust communication that's done across the globe, that really, repositions South Africa, from this narrative, that has been out there, that really points this variant as a South African variant. We need to really reposition. We need to send messages out there. It simply means that, there has to be money allocated to marketing and repositioning. And it also means that all the agents or the agencies of government, including the Department of International Relations, DTI, the Department of Tourism, SA Tourism, Brand SA, and everybody else who's out there in the international markets, who's marketing South Africa for whatever reason, we all have to work together to make sure that we remove this narrative, that have dominated the international media. From the protocols point of view, or the norms and standards, we already have protocols that the private sector have put out, and that are being used now when you go to any establishment within the value chain of tourism, be it an attraction, be it a hotel, guest house, or, backpacking, places. We're using these protocols. What needs to happen now is to say, we may have people that says that, but I don't belong to this association or this formation or that formation, so I don't need to follow protocols. So the big question is, how do we formalize and make sure that everyone has a uniform protocols to follow and to ensure that, we protect the industry? Again, if we don't have the norms and standards, we don't have the confidence of international markets and also for domestic markets. And therefore, it's important that we continue to do that and we formalize the space, but making sure that everyone follows these protocols. But the big and the most important thing is that while we communicate, while we try to open these markets, while we're trying to remove South Africa from this red, list that the US have done, the UK, many other countries have done, we need to keep in mind that, the work that's ahead of us, it's huge, and we have to work together and if you want to realize the results, and if you want to open up, these markets. There is a lot of work ahead of us, and we need to be diplomatic. We also need to show the data, and we also need to argue from the scientific point of view so that, we can be allowed to open. But more importantly, we need to vaccinate our own people in our own country.
Now, the Minister citing that the tourism recovery plan needs to also align with the economic reconstruction and recovery plan in the country, particularly in the area of infrastructure development. What are the commitments that the industry is making around that? I mean, the sum of projects around infrastructure that you're certainly committing to look at.
Look, pre-COVID, as an industry, we were very optimistic in terms of the new infrastructure and the renovations that were going to be made within our establishment. If you look at, in the past, if you look at, how much investment was made within the tourism sector, you will see that it was a healthy amount of money. It wasn't billion. Now, what we need to do is to, first of all, let's try to return to some level of figures that we had in 2019. Once we start to return to those level of figures, then we can talk more on investment. How do we invest? How do we build more hotels? I remember when we were at the investment, summit, when we were looking at the pledges from the tourism sector. There were many people who said, we want to put up a hotel in Midrand. We want to put up hotels in Durban. We're looking into Cape Town. But at this moment, with the current conditions that we have, it's very difficult for us to commit into the infrastructure development because the infrastructure that we have now, it's so much that domestic market cannot even fill it. So we still have hotels that are not open. If you look in Rosebank as an example, we still have the Hyatt Hotel, which is still closed. Many hotels in certain areas, are operating at single-digit numbers. You go to the likes of Cape Town, it's a similar story. Now we still need to fill up these hotels to then invest, in more infrastructure, to do renovations and many other things that will stimulate economic recovery and employ a whole lot more people from the construction sector.
Chifia Chivenga, I appreciate your time for joining us tonight. Tourism Business Council of South Africa CEO there. Still ahead for us tonight, shocking news coming from an oversight visit by the Democratic Alliance to the Dumbe municipality. We got the details for you next. Stay with us.